pleasure to be here with all of you this afternoon, and I want to welcome everyone to the Asset Protection and Asset Building panel. My name is Manuel Perez, and I represent the 80th Assembly District, which is the southernmost district in the state of California, one of the largest districts. It means the East Riverside County area, the Coachella Valley, specifically in all of Imperial County. It literally takes me about 3 hours to get from one end of my district to the other. But it's definitely a district that I'm proud of and proud to represent, and definitely, once again, a pleasure for me to be here. I'd first like to thank, as well, the California Center for Research on Women and Families, specifically Kate Arpillo, for bringing together this exceptional annual gathering of policymakers, advocates, and researchers. And quite frankly, that's important, if I may say, because it is your organizing, it's your advocacy, the grassroots, the folks in the trenches, that, in my opinion, need to hold us at the state legislature accountable. It's important that the grassroots connect with the treetops, if you will, and vice versa. And if we do not have that, then what ends up happening is policy perhaps gets implemented or moves through the channels in which it's not reflective of the needs of our communities. So I just want to say thank you all for being here and for being advocates. I'm also honored to be moderating this discussion on asset building today with so many of you in this session, which is one of high demand from the opening of registration. And I can tell from the room today that the issue of economic security is just as important to all of you as it is to me. Families are working hard here in the state of California, obviously every single day. But many times folks do not know what it means to save, and perhaps do not understand the concept of assets. What does that mean? Access to safe credit, for example, or building a personal safety net, for example, or ensuring that they have a home for not only themselves, but perhaps even for their kids, or some sort of funding for their children so that they can be educated at the university level. And so these are the experts here this afternoon to talk a little bit more about that. And I just want to take a step back, if I may, and present to you a theory of change, or at least a question within the theory of change. Why are we here? What's our purpose? What's the point? What does it mean to be in this workshop in which we're talking about asset protection and asset building? And how does that link to poverty alleviation? And is there a link as well to social justice as well as economic justice? And what does that mean? To me, all those questions are interconnected. And it's important, as I mentioned to you, that as we move forward, especially in these next 2 years, that as we build policy, that you are engaged and you integrate yourself in movement building and asset building in your own regions. And we begin to ask critically those questions, right? We become critical as to how will we alleviate poverty in our communities? And how do we fight for economic justice? Some people don't like to talk about those concepts for some reason or another. I think we need to hit those concepts. We need to make them real. And we need to have these type of conversations. I'm happy to say to you that I also have very dedicated staff. I just want to introduce to you, just in case you may have a question or two at the end of this panel, or you want to reach out to us. I have Amy Wilson here as well as Robert, and both of them are working for me in the Capitol building. And I also have obviously 2 offices back home, one in the Centro, one in Indio, in case you happen to be in my district. Now, I have the privilege and honor of chairing the Committee on Jobs and Economic Development and the Economy. And as I mentioned to you before, the concept of economic justice and why we're here and why I'm a legislator continues to pop up in my head as I move forward. And it is my responsibility, it is my obligation, in my opinion, as the chairman of Jobs, to work hard to ensure that we all have access to good paying jobs, and that we all have access to capital, and that we all have access to those folks that are making decisions on behalf of our communities. And so, for example, I've worked on ensuring that there is procurement and contracts for underrepresented communities, specifically folks of color and women. Ensuring that emerging domestic markets actually have an opportunity and have a chance and can compete in the global economy. Ensuring that as we move forward in the post-recession economy, that we have a workforce that's readily available to take on these green-collar jobs. And making sure that these jobs and making sure that these opportunities have as well the principal equity in place. So just a few thoughts coming from me. And now I'd like to, if folks are okay, introduce our speakers. We have a dynamic set of speakers here. Olivia Calderon, California Legislative Director for the New America Foundation. She is the California Legislative Director of the New America Foundation and develops and advances policies to bring economic and social justice to disenfranchised and low-income communities. She has drafted over two dozen pieces of legislation, 4 signed into law, including bills to expand the rights of returning Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans, protect patients from cancer-causing X-rays, preventing sexual assaults on college campuses, and help working families permanently exit poverty. She currently serves on the board of the Mission Economic Development Agency, and she is a founding member of Step Up California. She is also a member of Emerge California and Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, otherwise known as HOPE. Previously, Ms. Calderon served in the California legislature, most recently as a consultant to the Assembly Transportation Committee. She was a senior legislative assistant to the late California State Senator Jenny Coropesa, as well as the Jesse Unruh Assembly Fellow. Ms. Calderon is a Phi Beta Kappa graduate of UCLA. She also studied at the American University in Cairo as a National Security Education Program Scholar. She is a Marshall Memorial Fellow. If I may, I'm going to go ahead and just read all the bios for our 4 panelists. Sarah Brennan. Since 2008, Sarah Brennan has been the policy deputy for Los Angeles City Councilmember Richard Alarcón, advising him on a range of issues, with a particular focus on poverty and economic development. Previously, Sarah worked in Washington, D.C. as Senior Communications Associate for the New America Foundation and in New York City with the Office of Mayor Michael Bloomberg. She first developed an interest in the poverty and asset building field through her experience as an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer working with Community Express and SBA 7A loan program for minority and women entrepreneurs. Sarah received a Master's of Public Policy from USC's School of Policy, Planning, and Development. Leigh Phillips is the manager of the San Francisco Office of Financial Empowerment and the flagship Bank On San Francisco program, the first city-led initiative designed to bring unbanked residents into the financial mainstream. She has worked for Treasurer José Cisneros in the Office of the Treasurer since December of 2004. She previously managed the successful 2-year pilot of the city's Working Families Credit Program, a local match to the federal earned income tax credit. Prior to working for the city and county of San Francisco, Ms. Phillips worked in development and fundraising at the University of California, San Francisco. She received both her Bachelor of Arts in English Literature and Social Sciences and a Master's of Economics and Social Sciences in Women's Studies from the University of Manchester in the United Kingdom. And last but not least, Sunaena Chhatry. Sunaena Chhatry serves as a policy manager for EARN, a nonprofit that serves low-income workers by helping them access innovative financial products and create economic prosperity for future generations. As a policy manager, Sunaena advances EARN's policy and research priorities through strategic communication, outreach, and advocacy. She currently oversees EARN's social media communication and is the primary liaison for EARN's local and state level policy partners. She is a regular contributor to EARN's blog and writes about economic mobility and financial access issues. Sunaena is a graduate of the Women's Policy Institute, a program of the Women's Foundation of California. Before joining EARN, Sunaena worked at the Green Lining Institute, where she conducted research on issues affecting low-income and minority communities in California. Sunaena then worked at the Delaware Financial Literacy Institute, where she did the groundwork for the launch and implementation of the statewide social marketing campaign called First State Saves, an offshoot of the National America Saves campaign. Sunaena holds a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Berkeley. Can we give all four of our panelists a round of applause? And we will go ahead and start right away with Olivia Calderon. And the way this is going to be set, at least this workshop, is we're going to have every presenter present for 10 minutes. And if you can write down your question, hold on to your question, and at the end of all their presentations, then we'll go ahead and open up for some Q&A. Is that okay, folks? All right. Well, thank you, and if we can go ahead and have Olivia Calderon. The floor is yours, Olivia. A round of applause.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I am so thrilled to be here. This is my third time participating in the Working Families Summit. I just want to begin again by thanking Kate Carpolo, who is visionary. In 2009, it was the first year that an asset building track was included in the Working Families Summit, and it made perfect sense. I mean, we're here talking about empowering working families and creating a path for them to reach true economic security and mobility. And without assets as a key component to this conversation, families will never achieve economic security and mobility. So why is that? I'd like to get a sense of how many folks have participated in this conversation before. So how many people have been in this asset building? Okay. So the rest of you haven't. Who hasn't? Wow, brilliant. That's so exciting. I'm so happy to see all these new faces. Because, see, when we think about poverty, we're always talking about it from an income perspective. We're not thinking about poverty from an assets perspective, right? The idea that in order for families to permanently exit poverty, they need to have tools, they need to have incentives so that they can build their own personal safety net, their own personal savings, assets through home ownership, tools so that they could build a nest egg for retirement, accounts so that they could save for their kids' college education. This is important because in California, 30% of households are asset poor. What does that mean? It means that if a family were to lose their job or have already lost it, they don't have enough savings to be able to survive for 3 months. And for families that have low-income families that have limited resources to begin with, it's even more consequential, right? They're in line, they're out in the county, signing up for maybe volunteer work, maybe signing up for food stamps, and we know what's happening to our social safety net because of our economic challenges. It's eroding. And so for that reason, this conversation becomes more important than ever before. Families need access. Access to savings accounts, access to pathways so that they themselves can tool up. And at a time when we are eroding the social safety net, it is unconscionable that we wouldn't give families access to these tools at the very, very least. And so with that, I'm thrilled to be a part of this panel with colleagues here that are going to talk about how these initiatives that I'm going to focus on at the state level, how they're actually working at the local level. A lot of our visionary leaders in San Francisco and in Los Angeles are really testing these ideas, and the data, what the data shows is that working families can induce savings, particularly poor families, low-income families, when they're given the incentives that upper-income families have to saving. I'm going to focus on 3 issues: eliminating barriers to savings, expanding financial inclusion, and providing workers a way to easily save for retirement. But I want to make clear, that these are 3 priorities that I'm highlighting, but our agenda is broad. It's a local, it's a national, it's a statewide agenda. And in your packets when you were walking in, we provided you with a 2010 assets agenda that our colleagues in DC put out every year, as well as some background on the program. And with that, I just also want to just put a shout out to my colleague Maria Sotero, who's back there. And without Maria Sotero on this team, we could not make all this great work happen here in California. So thanks, Maria. Expanding financial inclusion. Why is this important? 1.5 million Californians are unbanked. They don't have a basic checking account, savings account, checking account. Shocking. Because without one, it's nearly impossible for you to begin to build your personal savings. And so through this Bank On movement, that's become a national movement where banks and credit unions have stepped up and started developing products and services that are tailored to the needs of the unbanked. It has been wildly successful, and we have Leigh Phillips that's going to share more and Sunaena about this fabulous program. We want to continue building on this movement to bank the unbanked, and so here in Sacramento we'll be working on banking development districts. It has a long legislative history, but the whole idea is this. The premise behind Bank On was to partner with existing banks and credit unions to help them understand that the unbanked market is a lucrative market. It's untapped, and you should develop products and services that are tailored to this market. It's a win-win. And so it was a partnership with existing banks and credit unions. But what about communities that have no banks or have a very limited branches in the community, in places like in Coachella Valley in Imperial County, or in places like in the San Joaquin Valley, like Lindsay, California? It doesn't have a bank nearby for about 30 to 40 miles. It's about 30 to 40 miles away. And so residents are forced to have to do their daily financial exchanges, paying their bills through check cashers, right? They charge 2 to 3%, some a lot higher, because voters have no other recourse and no other option. Then in places like that, we can look to programs that have worked, like the model in New York State, the Banking Development District model, that creates incentives for banks and credit unions that want to open up new branches in these communities and or expand their services in existing communities to bring in the unbanked into the financial mainstream, and that they can begin to build their personal savings. And are thrilled that Assemblyman Bradford is moving forward again with this proposal, and that it's a strong partnership with banks and credit unions. I see a colleague here, Alex Alanis, from the Bankers Association, who have been very, very supportive in moving this forward. And the idea behind it is quite simple. Banks and credit unions would be eligible for state and local deposits. I say local deposits because when this was introduced in New York State, it became successful when New York City stepped up and launched a local banking development district. And Los Angeles is actually leading the way in the state of California. They introduced the first banking development district ordinance in LA, and know that there needs to be a very, very strong state and local partnership to make this program successful. So we'll be moving forward with this, and look forward to working with all of you as we're advocating and helping to ensure that all various departments, Department of Financial Institutions, that the Treasurer's Office, and hopefully that the Lieutenant Governor's Office join us in making this a strong program. Last year, Lieutenant Governor Abel Maldonados understood why banking developments are important. They create economic revitalization opportunities, access to credit in these communities, and again, basic savings account and a checking account that a family needs to begin to build their personal savings. And it's important, right? Because workers in the state of California right now are penalized if they want to build their personal savings. The most vulnerable workers in California, those families that participate in the Welfare to Work program, CalWorks. Governor Brown just announced that he's eliminating $1.5 billion from the Welfare to Work program. Families on this program, the reason that it exists is to help them become self-sufficient, get back into the workforce again, and exit poverty permanently. But they're penalized if they want to grow their own personal savings. They can't build more than $2,000 in savings to participate in the CalWorks program. The governor, at the same time, eliminated the asset test, which is how it's known, in the CalFresh program, the food stamps program. There's no asset test for food stamps. There's no asset test in Medi-Cal. But there's an asset test for the CalWorks program that makes no sense. It's counterproductive, it's counterintuitive, and it's time that we eliminate this asset test. Families need to build their own personal savings to permanently exit CalWORKs. And why is that? If they experience another medical emergency, if they get into the workforce and their car breaks down, God forbid something tragic again happens, if they don't have their own personal savings as a cushion to be able to absorb that crisis, they'll be back on the rolls again. If we want CalWORKs to work for working families, we need to eliminate this $2,000 savings and the vehicle asset test of $4,650. It is time. Workers need access to the bank account, they need to be able to build their savings, and more importantly, they need tools when they're working to be able to save for retirement. We know there's a retirement savings crisis across the country. We know folks are not saving enough. Workers, 6 million workers in the state of California, don't have access to retirement savings at the workplace, don't have options to know how to save the way we know people save best, which is through payroll deduction, out of sight, out of mind. And so what we're proposing is that the legislature create an automatic IRA, an individual retirement account for private sector workers who don't have access to retirement savings at the workplace, a low-cost way for workers to automatically be enrolled and save through payroll deduction, and small businesses could match the savings of their employees in this IRA. But I want to make very, very clear that we do not in any way think this is a panacea for retirement savings, but think it's important that we eliminate the barriers to folks who enter retirement savings, that we create this very first step that folks get into the habit of saving for retirement in a very, very easy and automatic way, that workers opt out as opposed to having to opt in. I've been flashed a couple of, yes, I got it. I get really excited about these issues, and again, there are so many different options, and I'm thrilled to be sharing the stage today with Sarah Brennan in Los Angeles County and Leigh Phillips and Sunaena Chhatry in San Francisco, because a lot of these initiatives, again, like I mentioned, are taking hold, they're being tested at the local level, and they help to inform the statewide agenda. We all work very, very closely together. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Sarah Brennan. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Olivia. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm glad that the summit for the first time is including a look at what local initiatives are doing, because as Olivia mentioned, I think there's a really positive feedback loop that can happen when the state draws on local initiatives and vice versa. And so I work for Councilmember Alarcón in the city of Los Angeles. I think probably many of you might be familiar with him from his pretty recent turn as state senator for 8 years. He's now the council member representing the 7th district of the city of Los Angeles. And just brief background about our district is it's in the northeast San Fernando Valley. It is extremely diverse. Many Latinos, whites, and as well as a sizable population of Filipinos and African Americans. And it's also diverse socioeconomically. But as always, the councilman has been and continues to be a really strong advocate on behalf of those living in poverty and on behalf of working families in general. So the councilman's interest in asset building really, I think Olivia did a really good job of framing some of the conceptual reasons why he thinks that asset building is so important to anti-poverty efforts. It's something that supplements a lot of the things that we already care about. We know that direct assistance, such as food stamps, is crucial. We know all of these things, but we also know that if people are going to exit poverty, not only do they need to have better paying jobs, but they also need to have savings. And one quote that the councilman likes in particular is from Michael Chhatry, who some of you might be familiar with. He's kind of known as the godfather of asset building. And the quote is, "No one spends their way out of poverty." And so that's kind of the framing quote that he likes to mention when he's giving talks such as this. Research shows that kids of every income background, if they do have a savings account in their name, they're 7 times more likely to go to college, no matter what amount is in that account. So it's really kind of a powerful, they call it the asset effect. It kind of makes people future-oriented. And so with that, I'll just go into some of the programs that we're working on in LA. There was a handout outside, and there's 5 policies I listed, but I know that there's no way I'll be able to address them all in time, so I'll just very briefly highlight a couple. As Olivia mentioned, we are pursuing making development districts in the city of LA. I think it's important to note that some of the programs that are being discussed from San Francisco are very important and are complementary. But we know that in our district, for instance, in Pacoima, we have 80,000 residents in 7 square miles, and we have 2 bank branches. And that's just not enough. There's also some gang territory line issues where some people might be fearful to cross them, even if they did, bike or take the bus over to another branch. And so that's really the councilman's concern with why he put forward banking development districts in the city of Los Angeles. Also, it's important to say that people, according to the ARP Foundation, who's been doing a lot of research in this field lately, in the assets field, the average person who is unbanked or underbanked spends $40,000 in fees over the course of his or her lifetime just to cash their checks and pay their bills. And this is money that could obviously be put to far more productive use, and that's really the heart of the issue. Something else I wanted to mention is a lot of the efforts that the councilman and that the city is taking to increase the take-up rate of our existing benefit programs. And I know it doesn't sound very sexy, but it's actually a very, there's a huge pot of money every year that goes unclaimed in many different programs, and we really need to make sure, especially in these tight budget times, that we're getting people to access those. So 2 examples of that in LA is we've been focusing a lot on the earned income tax credit, the EITC, which I think many of you are probably familiar with, but just to highlight it quickly, it relieves much of the federal tax burden for low-income working individuals. It's one of the most successful anti-poverty programs in U.S. history in terms of the sheer number of people it brings above the poverty line once they've claimed the credit. And yet, still, it's not as well known as it should be, and 1 in 4 people nationwide don't claim the credit who deserve it. And so we've been doing a lot of things, including traditional public service announcements and op-eds to get the word out, but also looking at what other cities are doing. New York City started something they call the Auto EITC program, where they actually look through their personal income tax rolls and see which people should have qualified for the EITC but didn't claim it. They then flagged those, amended their returns for those individuals, and mailed it back to them, saying, hey, look, you qualified for $1,200. It's a really powerful model. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it in LA because we don't have a personal income tax, but I'm very pleased to say that at the hearing that we highlighted this proposal, we had many of our local IRS representatives there who committed to looking at it, and in fact, they did come back this fall and did this exact program for Californians. So this November 2010, 46,000 reminder mailers went out statewide. We don't have the results yet, and I don't know if anyone from IRS is in this room, but my understanding is they'll be sharing that with us later this winter. So that's one. Oh, another one about uptaking, making sure everyone who claims the credits they're eligible for. One EAP is something that the city of Los Angeles has rolled out in the last 2 years. And that's our particular vendor partner, but there's many other partner names. And what it is a one-stop benefits application screening tool. And other cities are doing it as well. I know some of them are local, but yet there's still many cities that don't do it at all. And it's really important because in the past, if someone went in to look for, just one program such as food stamps, their caseworker, for whatever reason, might not have said, hey, look, you're actually eligible for these 12, 14, 15 other programs. So that's something that we want to highlight. And finally, I'm just going to talk about responsible banking, which is something that the councilman's been working on more recently. It's still in the legislative process that he's really excited about. And basically, it stems from the idea that we as a city have countless contracts with large financial institutions worth billions of dollars, but we've never really asked what those institutions are doing in LA, what their community development activities are, what their best practices are. And we know that many of them do best practices and help out with IDA programs, or I know Citibank in LA has been very instrumental in our United Way EITC campaign. And yet, there's no systematic way of looking at what they're actually doing in the community. So the councilman is borrowing a model that has already been implemented in Cleveland and in Philadelphia. And essentially the idea is to have all the banks that have city contracts come back and give a brief summary of the different different community development activities they do specific to the city of LA. And if it sounds familiar, it also might remind you of the federal law, the Community Reinvestment Act, which says that any bank that's insured by the FDIC or another federal regulator needs to prove that they're meeting the credit needs throughout the communities that they serve. So just to give an example of what the vision is, right now the city has $6 billion in short-term, 5 years or less cash accounts, and of those, 0.16% are invested in banks that are local to LA, for example. So while this is not quite the same as the Move Your Money campaign, we know that we want to continue to partner with larger financial institutions. We do think it's a little bit shocking that only 10 million of the 6 billion is in some of these community banks that are doing great work. For instance, one bank, East LA Pan American Bank, is they've modified 100% of their home loan foreclosure modification requests. They've only foreclosed on one home in the past year. They offer free financial literacy classes at all area middle schools. They've opened a branch in South LA where no one else would have opened a branch. Hopefully once we have banking development districts, that will change. And they're partnering with the local hospital to make sure that every baby that leaves that hospital leaves with not just a blanket and a bottle, but with a $10 baby savings bond. So we would really like to see, right, these types of efforts and see what other banks are doing and do it systematically and leverage the city's resources in this way to encourage more of these types of activities. Time is up.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. And thank you, Assemblyman, for the wonderful introduction and for your much better than mine pronunciation of San Francisco. We don't roll our R's very well where I'm from in the UK, but I go through the practice. I'm Leigh. I'm the manager of the San Francisco Office of Financial Empowerment, which is one of only 3 municipal offices of financial empowerment in the country. The other 2 being in New York City and San Antonio, Texas. Our OFB is housed within the San Francisco Treasurer's Office, which is led by our elected treasurer, Jose Cisneros, who's been in office since 2004. And we are the city's banker and chief investment officer and, as well, the tax collector, but we're going to talk about that very So, in terms of financial empowerment, which is a little bit distinct from asset building, what we're really doing in San Francisco is looking at how we can use our unique role as local government, particularly as a finance arm of local government, to provide better financial products and services to low-income San Franciscans. Financial empowerment really does describe a set of approaches which is looking to stabilize the financial lives of lower-income people. And a lot of us here are looking at increasing income, but really we're more focused on decreasing expenses, reducing debt, and encouraging savings, and that's where we're focusing our attention. The 4 main categories of these types of initiatives are improving access to financial services and developing the right financial products to help people get into the financial mainstream, advancing financial education and counseling, encouraging asset building and protection, and promoting tax time services and benefits. And San Francisco actually got its first foothold in this work by introducing a local limited earned income tax credit called the Working Families Credit when Mayor Newsom took office on our Lieutenant Governor in 2005. So what I'd like to do briefly is to reuse the frame of 2 of our programs in San Francisco to discuss the unique influence of local government and the unique role that we've been able to play. The first, Olivia has already mentioned, is Bank on San Francisco. And it's no coincidence that both of the programs I'll be talking about today we have launched in partnership with the New America Foundation and with Brennan, and we're very proud to have them as partners. So Bank on San Francisco, back in 2005, New America brought it to our attention that 1 in 5 San Franciscans did not have a checking account with a mainstream financial institution. And that number was 1 in 2 for African Americans and Latinos, meaning that they're spending probably about 5% of their net income each year on check cashing fees, as well as being more likely to be victims of crime, less prepared to weather a disaster, and not having a foothold on the economic ladder to be able to advance and build assets. So we joined with the partners I mentioned, as well as the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, to look at how we could influence banks and credit unions to offer better products. We convened all of the bank presidents and CEOs and credit union presidents and CEOs in San Francisco and said, we want you to modify your products in the following ways to open up the market to unbanked San Franciscans. And over the course of a year of negotiations, 15 decided to join the original Bank On program. And which has now been operational since 2006. We then, in turn, went and used our trusted voice with the community to let people know that if you're using a check casher, you're getting ripped off. And in fact, our first advertising campaign had giant billboards all over San Francisco that said exactly that: check cashers are ripping off. The results so far, just very briefly, over the last 4 years, we've actually opened over 70,000 checking accounts as part of Bank on San Francisco. But what's been more incredible for us is how this is spread across the country. And there are now 70 cities and states with Bank on programs in the US, including the first statewide effort, which was Bank on California. There's a Bank on Los Angeles, and Bank on Fresno, San Jose, Sacramento, Santa Ana, and San Diego. I just said it. I wouldn't be sorry. I would not be sorry. Yeah. But what's more exciting, even than that, is the fact that in 2010, President Obama announced the creation of Bank on USA with a $50 million budget request, which we're hoping will make it through this year's budget. So we think that program is a really good example of how local stakeholders can convene, use the power of local government, and then really come up with a scalable model that's spread across the country. To build on this work, we have now, of course, our Office of Financial Empowerment. We've launched an alternative payday loan, what I call Pay Plus San Francisco, which allows people with low or no credit to access emergency funds at 18%. The rate of interest is close to the 400% that your average payday lender is offering these days. We also have a financial education network, and this year we'll be launching a citywide program to encourage the use of direct deposit, or as my boss likes to say, become the first paperless payday in all of America. So I'll be getting on that tomorrow. But the second program I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about, we're very excited about, is our kindergarten college program, which is launching as we speak. So as Sarah just mentioned, there has been studies that have shown that a child with savings in their name for college is about 7 times more likely to attend, regardless of the amount of those savings and also regardless of income or ethnicity or academic achievement. So savings is actually emerging as one of the primary reasons why people are able to attend college. Asset building advocates for many years have been calling for a wide-scale demonstration of what a children's savings account program could look like. And so San Francisco has decided to take the lead on that. Again, with the partnership with Numeric Foundation and with the leadership of EARN and with CFPD as our nonprofit partners. But I really must say that it was the leadership of Mayor Gavin Newsom, who is now the Lieutenant Governor, who fought very, very hard during a difficult budget time to get public funds to start a college savings program for every child entering the city's public schools, starting in kindergarten. So this, we believe, is going to be the first publicly funded universal college savings program in the country. In partnership with San Francisco Unified School District, every kindergartner entering SFUSD will now receive a college account in their name with a $50 deposit from the city of San Francisco. If you are eligible and apply for free and reduced lunch, we're going to add an extra $50. Families are then going to be given the account information. This is a little behavioral economics. We're going to sign you up for the account. It's automatic unless you choose to opt out. You get an account card with your account number, and you can start saving in that account. And our wonderful partners at EARN have actually raised the money. So for the first $100 a family saves, EARN is going to match it with another $100. So in the first year of the program, you can get up to $100 from the city, you can get $100 from EARN, and we're hoping that families are going to take advantage of that opportunity starting actually this month. So we're going to be studying this over the next few years to really see what impact this has, not just on savings, but also on school performance and eventually on college achievement. So why do we believe local government really is essential to these efforts? First of all, we are a convener and an influencer and a negotiator on a level that really can't be paralleled by other groups in the local community. We're able to bring a diverse range of people to the same table. We're a trusted voice within the community. People are used to hearing health and safety messages from us. And now we're trying to make messages like get a bank account be the same as get a smoke detector. We have the power of elected office. Our mayor and our treasurer, they speak to the media. They have a bully pulpit. They travel across the city. We have the ability to create and pass legislation. But we're also the largest employer in the city of San Francisco. And we're also a huge customer, as Sarah just mentioned, particularly of banking services. We're able to lead to service integration, and I think this is vitally important to these efforts. One of the most important things I think that we've done is with Bank on San Francisco. Now when you get screened for public benefits in San Francisco, system, the question, do you have a bank account, is now part of that landscape. Starting your education with a college savings account within the next 3 years of our pilot is now going to be normal in San Francisco. And I think asset building and financial empowerment cannot really remain sideline projects. They must be integrated into the anti-poverty work that we do every day. The last point on this really is scale. Other governments are paying attention to what other governments are doing, and this peer-to-peer learning from mayor to mayor or city council member to city council member really is what's encouraged the spread, particularly with Bangkok. The state, we believe, can play much the same role as the local government in these issues and has much more authority to move financial institutions to cap interest rates, to remove predatory products, and we hope that they'll continue to do so. They're an employer and they're a customer of even greater proportions from the local government, and they can also look to service integration, financial education, basic checking accounts, pay cards, all sorts of other products. I'll just give you one example. This year, our Working Families Credit Program switched its credit. Used to get $100 flat rate. We made it $125 if you got direct deposit and $50 if you got a paper check. Our take-up of direct deposit went from 3% to 90% in 1 year. So we think local and state government has a really important role to play, but we are not, we can't do everything. And there's some things that we don't do very well. And we need to rely on our wonderful partners. And so I'm actually going to hand it over to my colleague, Sunaena, Chhatry from to describe the role that community groups play in partnering on these types of initiatives. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Leigh and Mr. Perez. It's an honor to be here, and I'm really excited that there are several folks in here who are new to asset building. Being one of the only service providers, a direct service provider, I want to tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing at EARN. And I also want to share some specific insights into how EARN and the City of San Francisco's Office of Financial Empowerment, we've been able to leverage the strengths of each organization, each agency, to really create unique opportunities and create innovative programs at the local and state and national level. So EARN is currently the nation's leading provider of match savings programs. Since 2001, we've been able to help tens of thousands of low-wage, low-income families through match savings accounts, through microloans, through financial coaching, and through financial education. EARN has a unique approach to catalyzing prosperity for low-income workers that leverages the integration of direct service, applied research to see how our work is affecting the lives of low-income families, and also by organizing key stakeholders to drive policy change that have the potential to go to scale. As you are all well aware from this morning's panel, California is facing an extraordinary general fund budget deficit. This means there is a finite and shrinking pool of resources, which I don't need to remind you of. So for programs and policies that open doors for working families throughout the state, there are tremendous challenges to introduce policy at the state and national level. Given this reality, it is all the more important that local efforts are done well and tested rigorously in order to lift up the best ideas to scale. For policy advocates and practitioners operating in the asset building field, this is a calling to empower service recipients, empower and engage service recipients and constituents about policies that support asset building. If we look at asset building as a social movement, what is needed is a groundswell of grassroots public support for programs that create new vistas of prosperity for low-income families. In the resource-constrained environment that we are all currently operating in, it is important that we fully leverage the strength of both nonprofits and public agencies. This may mean breaking away, for nonprofits, this may mean breaking away from the traditional model of the nonprofit receiving public funding from the city to deliver a particular service. Unlike this traditional model, as Leigh alluded to, through our partnership with the City of San Francisco on programs like Bank on San Francisco and Kindergarten to College, we've learned that there are unique strengths that we're both able to leverage, and we're able to be more innovative and affect more people as a result. Some early victories, I want to highlight some early victories with Bank on San Francisco and Kindergarten to College to really highlight the unique strengths that both agencies can bring. So an early victory of Bank of San Francisco can be directly, and also KDC can be directly attributed to the fact that these efforts were actually led by a public entity and not a nonprofit. Treasurer Jose Cisneros and former Mayor Gavin Newsom's leadership with Bank of San Francisco was extremely valuable when convening and negotiating with financial institutions in order to offer a low-cost financial product to all people going through the initiative. Similarly, with KDC, the Kindergarten to College program, their leadership was vital when winning over the support of key players, like the school district, for instance. As the city's nonprofit partner, EARN was able to bring some unique offerings to the table as well. As a direct service provider of match savings accounts and financial coaching, we were able to lend our expertise on what motivates people to save, as well as identify key barriers to building wealth. For example, a qualitative research study conducted by EARN revealed that a savings match is an extremely powerful incentive for low-income families, and when combined with financial education, it can have a transformative effect on the lives of people who successfully go through these types of products and programs. This helped inform our decision to match the first $100 saved by students and families during the first year of the K2C program, which we're really excited about. Another area of strength for EARN in helping with the K2C program was really around fundraising. As a nonprofit that's been providing direct service to clients and have been matching the savings of low-income families for almost a decade, we have a database of donors, private individual donors, who are very excited about supporting the educational and savings aspirations of low-income families. And we were really able to exercise this in fundraising for K2C, and we were able to do it in a fairly short period of time. And this is something that we're very committed to, and we hope to continue in year 2 of the K2C program. Another example where we were really able to leverage the resources that we have through our clients is when K2C funding in the city was actually threatened at one point during protracted budget negotiations. EARN was able to mobilize constituents and our clients that we've been serving very quickly in a matter of days to urge Board of Supervisors, the city's legislative body, to support funding for the program. Our clients were able to provide personal testimony of how match savings programs transformed their lives. This, combined with the mayor's position, was obviously a successful effort as funding for K2C was reinstated, and now these accounts will be seeded with $50 to $100 initially. As I mentioned earlier, if we look at the asset building field as a social movement, what has been missing is a groundswell of grassroots public support. To a large extent, efforts to advance asset building programs and policies have been limited to a small ecosystem of supporters drawn from the philanthropic, policy, academic, and nonprofit communities. In order to propel asset building efforts to the next level, in program and policy, the field needs to have a strong grassroots constituent base that can push for public policies that support prosperity for low-income families, especially as resources are shrinking at the state level. For this reason, EARN has launched a long-term, statewide constituency building effort with the intention of building a statewide policy and research agenda that is driven by an engaged and active constituent base. The first phase of this work that we're conducting right now is listening to people who represent the diversity of California, especially those who lack access and opportunities to basic financial services. From these listening sessions, we hope to understand more directly the serious challenges that keep low-income families from financial success. But we'll also hear stories of hope, some of which may spark ideas and solutions for reducing asset poverty and creating financial security. Thank you.
They all did an excellent job. What'd you say? There is some time. I'm going to about maybe 15 minutes for some Q&A. And if I may first start here with our advocates, presenters, if they would like to respond to one another's comments. Any questions from the floor?
My question is about Social Security. For people who are on disability and they want to save money on Social Security, they also have the asset limit test. They can only have $2,000. They can't have a car with a certain amount of money. How does that also help with people who are on disability? That's it.
Who would like to answer that question?
Right. We've been focusing here in the state of California on eliminating the asset test for CalWORKs, but you're absolutely right. The asset test impacts those families as well, and again, it is counterintuitive and counterproductive. In 2006, Arnold Schwarzenegger changed the law here in California when we introduced legislation in partnership with EARN to create savings exclusions, and so families in CalWORKs didn't have to spend their retirement savings or their college savings to get access to temporary assistance. But again, I think as has been mentioned by our colleagues talking about the bank on movement and having a savings account and building your own personal savings, how critical and how important that is. And so we want to see the complete elimination of the asset test. And it's important because you also have other programs out there, right? Like the earned income tax credit, like Sarah said. We have a study that came out in the spring of 2010 that showed that California leaves $1.2 billion untapped. 800,000 Californians are not claiming the earned income tax credit. And the average tax credit that a family does pay is over $2,000. The Obama administration expanded the tax credit to over $5,000. And so what happens when we have working families that we go out there and we do our PSAs and press releases and our community events and Vita-sites and we get families to tap into this credit, that for them, the families that are participating in these other programs would have to spend it down. The message is not a penny earned, it's a penny saved, but spend every penny you have. And Sarah, be very clear that families don't spend their way out of poverty, they save their way out of poverty, and so it's absolutely time that we eliminate the asset test, not just in CalWORKs, but also SSM.
Right.
Hi, before I say I want to give on everyone reports because that's what all the hard work on. I'm the writer, operations coordinator in Stockton, California, and everything you spoke about is part of my job. My job is pretty much helping our county get out of generational poverty. And the thing is that when I wrote the business plan for them, one thing that really struck me was the lack of awareness of all these programs that we have.
think, I'm trying to think of a polite word to say it, but you really need to bother them, basically. This is something that they should be interested in, right? Because elected officials want votes, and essentially you're letting them know to let their constituents know that they qualify for thousands of dollars. I mean, it's really a no-brainer, and so I'm not sure familiar with the local politics in Stockton, but there's got to be an elected official you can find who will get it and who will be your advocate for it.
And I would just add there to Sarah's comments there, it's about how you frame it. And obviously, I think you're right, it's a no-brainer. When they know that they're going to get votes for letting people know that they're going to receive some assets or some income as a result of this work and their involvement, I think that anyone who's running for office or is an office is going to want to let people know about that. Sunaena?
I just want to add, I think another really important goal for nonprofits is to really use your goal to educate policymakers and representatives and to do it early. In the case of San Francisco, we reached out to Gavin Newsom before he was even elected, while he was still on the campaign trail. And that really started something. Brennan and CFP, I think you, America also, we all together reached out to him as a candidate and said, this is an issue that we think is really important that you should know about. And that, I think that really planted the seed for all of these different things that have started.
We have time for one more question. Perez.
Well, on the idea of direct deposit banks, I'm wondering ways that state and local governments could encourage that with direct deposit salary. And there's one answer that was in the materials is put state money, the local government money in banks that located in unbanked areas. I wonder too, though, if they could not, at both those levels, consider providing points when there's bid on a contract with the city and state government, give points to businesses that do direct deposit to pay their employees.
Well, in terms of the direct deposit for employees, we are going out to see my campaign, starting with our own employees. And as far as banks are concerned, direct deposit customers are the best kind of customers, the sticky customers is what they refer to. Because once, we all know, right, once you set up direct deposit, you can never leave that bank. You can ask them about doing a direct deposit, you'll pay and all that. So being able to, what we're trying to do, craft in San Francisco, are these win-win partnerships where we say, what's good for business, what's good for financial institutions, and what's good for low-income families. If we can find a solution that touches all of those elements, then I think we're in a pretty good space. But I don't know if Sarah has anything to add about on that issue too.
Yeah, I would like to. I think basically the idea of responsible banking for LA is that we would be measuring, and it's hard to talk about a little bit because we don't have our report back from the treasurer. We're expecting it at the end of this month with the specific areas that will be measured. But for instance, one of them that the committee clearly asked for is to know what exact efforts a particular institution has made to modify home loans to avoid foreclosure. And so, for instance, then that bank will be rated and assigned scores in different categories like residential lending, small business lending, charitable activities. And then those with the highest scores would get extra points on their RFPs, as you suggested. So it would be using that kind of carrot and stick approach both to leverage the fact that we do so much business with them to see them treat our residents in a way that will help them build their assets.
Time has run out on us, unfortunately, and I know that you may have still quite a bit of questions. Our advocates are here, and they'll be here for the next 30 minutes, an hour, for the rest of the conference, answering questions.